Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scot MacTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
So we used to have a star rating system where after you complete your Wi-Fi session, you rate, the Wi-Fi. And we found out no one ever did that because who logs out of Wi-Fi? They just close their browser, they leave the establishment. They never actually rate their Wi-Fi. And one of our hotel owners we were serving says, Vivek, I have this thought. Why don't you move this feedback system to the beginning rather than at the end? The smiley side we kind of thought was better than the stars. And he said, just make it about the hotel in general and see how that works.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Wednesday. It's the Pitchwerks podcast coming to you once again, talking about presenting your ideas at work. And I have a really cool, fun guest to talk to you about who's been very forthcoming with me in all of our various conversations. His name is Vivek Kumar. He is with a company called Qlicket. You have not heard of them, and that is your loss. However, we're going to fix that, and we're going to fix it today. Before we get into that, we're going to talk a little bit about how I need you all to do me a favor, and that is iTunes. I need you to get in there, rate this fine program, and that's going to be with a 1 to 5 stars. You've seen it before. Give me 5 stars and say, the quality of guests on this program is amazing. Or you can hit me with 1 star and say, I meet more interesting people at the bus stop. It doesn't matter. It's the feedback I'm after. Whatever your opinion is, express it as a star rating. Give us some constructive criticism one way or the other. And also don't forget to interact with us. Pitchwerks.com is where the whole experience comes together, but you can also find us on social. That's the LinkedIn company page, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is that you like to waste time when you pretend to be working. Just hit me up and I will answer whatever you've got. But by all means, let's move on. Let's talk to Vivek. He's got some cool stuff to tell us. All right, everybody says this wrong. I'm going to try to say it right. Here comes Vivek Kumar of Qlicket. Did I get it right?
That's exactly right.
See, you got to care about the person sitting across from you and saying their name right. I learned that by having the last name MacTaggart. Trust me. There were a few times like, you hurt my feelings. You said my name wrong. So before we jump into all the various and sundry high concepts that we're going to get into on this show, I want to make sure everybody understands what it is that Qlicket is actually at its core. Tell people what it is you're working on.
So we have an intelligent guest Wi-Fi platform that makes it super easy for establishments, primarily hotels today, to capture feedback from guests when they're signing into the Wi-Fi network at their property.
I met you at Demo Day here locally, which was a big event, and I have to say that was probably the strongest class that we've produced, if not ever. I mean, in a long time. Yeah?
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah.
Your pitch, among other things, had so much great value front loaded into it, where you said, and before we get too deep into it, how old of a company are you?
We've been around for a few years, but in the U.S. we started in about mid to late 2015. So about 2 years, coming up on 2 years, a little under 2 years.
Yeah, that doesn't make you an ancient company. And then how long before the U.S.?
We were in India on a different business model for a couple of years.
So that doesn't even count. Yeah. I really don't want to, if it's a different model.
It's probably about 18 months of relevant data.
Oh boy, yeah. It's still a very young company, and that's my point, right? So you march onto that stage amongst a whole bunch of people who are just blowing through tons and tons of data and tons of, I don't want to say noise because that's more insulting than I want to be. How about this? It's a lot to take in if you're not able to slow down and collect your focus and make sure you're getting it all, right? And that's the experience I was having, was that I'm looking at one startup after the other. You're all obviously very well accomplished. Like I said, it's a tremendous class of companies coming to Demo Day. And you say, we have 100 people using our platform, and not 100 people, but 100 businesses rather. We've never lost one of them. And we've multiplied user engagement in this feedback piece of it I believe you said 11 times. Am I right?
So the average hotel or the average third-party review site collects 1 review per day per hotel. So if you go to tripadvisor.com, booking.com, you look up the hotel you maybe want to stay at, it's typically got 1 review a day.
Right.
Which the challenge for a hotel is that oftentimes when guests are unhappy, they don't even leave a bad review, let alone some of them do, but a lot of them don't ever even do that.
And apathy, as far as I'm concerned, is the worst possible way to leave somebody. But
yeah, essentially a complaint should be, it's a compliment in a way for, it's a way for you to know how to get better. And so if no one's giving you that data point, in fact, 19 out of 20 disappointed guests don't even say anything at all. They just complain to their friends or never come back to the property. With our system, we're able to collect 11 reviews per day per hotel.
That
so
is
it's about
11x.
Yeah, 11x.
I'm sorry. That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, apathy's the enemy. Hate and love are not opposites. I hate this property. I love this property. Those aren't opposites. If you care enough to write it down, it's because your feelings were hurt. You wanted to have a great experience and you didn't. And you really wanted this to work out. And that's saying to somebody like, can't you make it better? Can't we do something about this? Someone who doesn't care, you're never going to reach them. So if you're measuring apathy, it has to be in that 1 review out of 100 or 200 rooms. That's where apathy lives, is only 1 person out of the 200 people, 200 families that are staying at this hotel cared enough to actually say anything about their stay.
Yeah. And oftentimes, guests say they're going to leave reviews or they want to, but think about what they have to do today. They either have to pick up the phone and pick up the phone, or they have to either walk down to the front desk, or they go on social media, or they open up a link in an app. There's an additional level of work required in all of those steps. But when you're signing into the Wi-Fi, which 90% of all guests do when they're staying at a hotel.
Right. With at least 1 device, if not 3 or 4.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you give them the optionality to provide feedback, and that feedback is not going into a black hole. It is sent to someone on staff in real time who can address that while you're there and ensure that whatever may be a concern for you can get resolved in that moment.
In a timely manner.
Yeah.
A lot of people will leave a retail establishment angry with the sales rep or the clerk or the customer service person, and they'll have an outburst and then they'll just make for the door, right? Conventional wisdom is that that's when the manager of that establishment is supposed to run out and intercept this person and say, like, I'm sorry that you're having a problem with our representative. You won't have to work with them anymore. You can work directly with me. Tell me what's going on. And I love the aspect of this where, you've got this hotel where that this isn't a quick drive-by visit. And no one was using it. No one was using that aspect of the hotel transaction experience where it's like, okay, you're obviously going to be here long enough at least to get some sleep and have some breakfast and, park your car. Like, there's plenty of opportunity for service recovery, and they were missing it. I love that. I love the way you're coming at this. Now, I got to tell you, from a personal level, I was at the Embassy Suites in San Francisco by the airport, weeks ago. And they left me a nice card, right there on the desk where I was going to be working. And it said, in case anything is wrong, at the top. And there were these boxes that you could check. And it was like, the air conditioning's not good. The Wi-Fi doesn't work. My light bulb needs changed or whatever. And then it said, walk this to the concierge desk and we will take care of your issue right away. Now, this is before I met you. This is before I even knew what you were working on, right? And I sat there and I was like, this isn't right. And I understand where they were coming from was totally well-intentioned and frankly, better than most of the hotels I stay at. I don't see that card very many places. And even then I was like, so I'm on the 9th floor. I was on the 9th floor, room 906, right? It's not even that far from the elevator, but I got to walk to the elevator. I got to push the button. I got to wait for it to come. I got to come downstairs. And there was always a line at the concierge desk. And I hope that you can take this and use this, right? Because this seems to be the analog version of what you're building. I love it. I love what you're doing. So tell me how now you expand from where you're at? Where do you start to build that 100 up to maybe 1,000 or 10,000?
Yeah. And by the way, thank you for the kind words and for having me on today. We think the opportunity is much beyond hospitality and hotels. If you imagine where people interact with the establishment in the offline world, so you're trying to build customer engagement and you're trying to intercept something before it gets onto a review website. So we've talked about in hotels, that's something before TripAdvisor or Booking.com, Google reviews, etc. Can you imagine the same thing in restaurants? So you go in a restaurant today, you may not have a stellar experience. You go on Yelp after the fact. Someone says you weren't happy with your food. I didn't want to tell my server. They asked if everything's okay. Most people normally say, it's good.
We're fine.
Exactly.
Because you're the problem, maybe.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you. No, I mean, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
Or at least I'm blaming you.
I'm blaming you, or there's a sense people don't even want to cause a scene or an issue. It's hard to give disappointing feedback to someone in person. It's easier to be scathing online about something than to rip into someone in person. That's not true for everyone, but generally speaking of good-natured people, it's hard.
I'm going to stop you right there and challenge you, because I don't even think it's necessarily ripping into them. It's something about an aversion to conflict in general.
Yeah. Car dealership waiting rooms, home care centers, hospitals, even in big box retail, that we think there's an opportunity not just around reviews, but around customer engagement and creating this two-way dialogue. So for example, when you walk into a Target today, you walk into a Macy's and you log onto the Wi-Fi, they know less about you when you're in their store than they know about you when you're visiting their website online.
Yeah, that's true.
That doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. And if you're imagining what Amazon is doing to all, you don't even need to imagine, it's actual factual data of Amazon.
Your Amazon searches are showing up in your Facebook feed, and that's not an accident.
Yeah. And then you look at the market cap of Amazon and you compare it to all these other big box retailers, and you're sort of wondering how to compete. And we think the best opportunity for big box retail is when you have someone in that store, you want to make sure they make that purchase in that store without, before walking out. You don't want, people to walk in and walk out without purchase. And
well, especially if it was a problem that could have been solved. I can't find something I want. Do you have it in the back? They don't ask, they leave, right?
It's true.
That's cool.
Yeah. And you can actually combine the offline and online. So, the beauty with Wi-Fi and signal strengths, you can sort of triangulate how people are navigating within a store. So today, if somebody walks into a store and they don't make a purchase, that data is not necessarily recorded. You have beacons, you have cameras, but you want to kind of understand if someone is dwelling in a certain part of the store, they're looking at it, but they're not biting. Why are they not biting? Let's understand that.
Right.
Or you also want to understand, if they're utilizing their device, not just what kind of device it is or how long they're online or, categorically, is it video streaming or is it web browsing? But if you can sort of get a better sense of their preferences, you can send the right sales rep to them at the right time. So for example, we were talking about sports. If you're a big hockey fan, and you're looking for someone who's got expertise on the right kind of hockey gloves or the hockey stick, or if they approach you at the wrong time. So maybe, it's been, hey, Scott, noticed you've been here a few times. Thanks for coming back. Maybe we could interest you in something specifically around this product or this sport.
Right.
And that's a very basic example, but the idea being, it's about identifying the right time to approach someone in the right manner with the right expertise and demographic, maybe connection available as well.
So I'm hearing local positioning, right? I'm hearing something about sort of like keeping a record of, like this device has been on this network before. There's a certain degree of tying that to like a purchase history. I'm not 100% sure how you do that, but I heard you say something along those lines. And obviously there's a lot of money being spent in marketing tech right now. So, the field is pretty well fertile for you. But some people struggle not knowing which one of those to chase first, or even how to get involved in a new vertical market or in a new solution. How are you looking at that?
That's a great question. And we have someone on our team, John Goldschmidt, who's actually dedicated to new business and product development. We were having a chat today, in fact, about where do we go beyond hospitality? do you think of it as we're expanding to this vertical because it's most similar, so maybe restaurant and cafes? And then we sort of sat down and thought about, okay, well, why don't we think about it this way? So which establishments already have Wi-Fi? That's a good starting point. Which establishments can make decisions locally? They don't need to roll it up to a corporate level kind of decision making.
That's a very good, like feet on the ground sales question. Yeah. Absolutely.
Which establishments have the budget to be able to afford this type of thing at the enterprise level?
Oh my God, I'm in love with this whole conversation.
Yeah. Who is maybe 1 or 2 degrees away, connection-wise, where we could get an introduction to. That's literally what the conversation sort of evolved into from, the typical investor will say, what are the next 3 verticals and why? And that's good at a high level, but that's not about execution of we don't have paying customers in the US outside of hospitality, really. So if we're going to go enter into new verticals, they're going to say, who else have you sold this to already?
See, I object to the vagueness of that question as a real question. Right. I don't think that that's a real question. I think they're trying to figure out whether or not you're thinking.
Yes.
Right? That's not a question that the investor wants to know. They want to know whether or not there's a plan, and it's an easy way to kick that tire.
Yeah.
You have to respect each one of those applications as being a sales vehicle unto itself. And you mentioned restaurants. I love restaurants for your application because I see people sitting there waiting for their food going, well, I want to watch YouTube videos. Should I really do it with my data? I could use it on their Wi-Fi instead. I don't know. It's going to take a while before you figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, the counter argument is there's unlimited data plans nowadays and people don't need to connect. I think, and in hotels, it's very natural to connect to Wi-Fi. There's a sense, though, that this isn't that big of a behavioral change to inspire people to connect to the Wi-Fi network by giving them the right incentive or hook. And so if you give them not only the opportunity to provide feedback or maybe the opportunity to have a coupon or to know about what's going on in particular in the store that may interest them, if you get them to connect that first time and their reason to connect is something that's also beneficial for them, they're much more likely to connect in the future. And even if they don't go in that store and manually turn on their Wi-Fi, most people leave their Wi-Fi on by default on their smartphones.
I would agree with that just because it's simpler than remembering to go in and click it on and off.
Yeah.
But I go back to hotels is perfect because you have an extended window of time to address the issue, and staffing has to be a concern whenever dealing with a material problem. Restaurants, you can make the argument, maybe. But I also think there's probably a bunch of people who don't log on to the Wi-Fi until dessert.
That's probably pretty true.
Right? They're sitting there drinking their coffee, and how fast can they get back is a huge question. So, and I'm only talking right now from a target selection perspective because you have a responsibility as leadership to decide what's the best payoff for the people working here and the people that invested in those people. So if I were in your conversation, which I still love, I love the way you guys are thinking, but I would be looking for longest time of occupancy as my metric.
That's a pretty interesting way to look at it.
And maybe not necessarily occupancy, but occupancy after login to Wi-Fi, because we said dessert was the problem, right? You know, if you logged into dessert 5 minutes before you left, or logged into Wi-Fi at dessert 5 minutes before you left, no one has had an opportunity to intercept and do service recovery.
Yeah.
So I think that type of metric might be useful. Who stays after they log in the longest?
That's pretty interesting. And so the argument essentially is in a restaurant, you're not necessarily logging in at the beginning of the restaurant, at the beginning of your time in the restaurant. It's toward the end, whereas
you could be. I don't know what the numbers are. I am entirely unencumbered by fact here. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. It probably also depends on how well the restaurant promotes this ability.
Wi-Fi.
The free Wi-Fi, and also to do something on the Wi-Fi, a reason to connect in the first place beyond getting free data.
Nice play. I like that.
So if, it could be a coupon, it could be giving us feedback, it could be a surprise. We don't know yet. I think we're working on identifying what those things are.
I would look at whenever they do like the Pittsburgh Home Show, right? That's a cool one. Convention centers that bring in the public.
Yes.
You're going to get there and it's going to say, don't forget to log into our free Wi-Fi, because that's how door prizes get done. That's how.
Yeah.
I like that.
I really like what you were saying about places that where you're interacting or logging in when you first get there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fascinating way to think about it, because we were talking about the sales strategy earlier, and we covered a few of them. One of the others is like someone who's willing to take a risk and stick their neck out and likes you, to be able to sell this internally. But in terms of targets, that's a really, really
well.
good
At
way
least
of
then
thinking.
you can figure out what community you should invest in.
Yeah.
And again, people buy from people.
Yeah.
Okay, and I hate to sound like that person who rejects sales tech, because I don't. Right? A lot of times, the people buy from people trope gets pulled out of the closet when somebody is trying to argue against marketing automation or advanced sales tactics or those kinds. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just saying that in order for a community to decide that you are the de facto standard, you have to be in the community and invested in it. So you've got to pick somebody that you're literally going to like bet your future on and get to know well. And in the hospitality industry, I guarantee you've been to their conferences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know some of the people because you've seen them now over the last couple of years. You said 2015, 2017. There's been a couple of these rotations that you've been able to do. Right. And there's usually one in the fall and one in the spring, and they're run by totally different people. We see these people at this group and these people at this other group, but they know us, we know them. And you plant roots, just like being in a community in your personal life. So where do they log in, and where do they have a convention? Where do they have a community that you become the de facto standard? I think that's where you start digging for gold. But I repeat, I am unencumbered by fact. I am making this up, and it's my show, and I get to edit it so I sound brilliant. So take everything with a grain of salt.
No, that's a pretty good way of thinking about it. When we first came to the U.S. and we tried to sell to hotels, this wasn't obvious. We at first were actually pretty nervous about being able to sell in the U.S. We're this company in India. We had some traction there, but the market clearly isn't big enough there. And someone who believed in us said, guys, I've tried out your product for 3 months. Go try it in the U.S. And so
nice.
We came to the U.S. and that was kind of a confidence boost. Was here already for a wedding, decided to stay rather than going back to India. And we started getting customers. So some of our investors were also hoteliers, and we were begging them to give us a chance. And they finally did. And so we did 2 or 3 of their hotels. And then when we started to try and sell to other customers, the first question was always, who else are you currently serving? And, you'd list, the types of, the hotel names and maybe the owners. And if they knew them, they'd say, oh, I know him. He's a good hotelier. If he's using you, I can use you. And so then it kind of became a snowball effect. It became, you get 1, 2, 3, you get to 6, you start to get to 10, you get to multiple states. And then, you sort of develop a process, and then you identify your channels, like you mentioned, trade shows, and it sort of becomes a bit more automated. You start building a team around that, and you
start to get more confident of what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And, initial stages of product market fit. Where we are today is trying to grow beyond kind of this product market fit in this smaller market, apparently. And if you think about hotels, it's great, but that's only one vertical.
Which is highly price competitive, which means that they're very choosy about where they spend their money.
Exactly. And you pretty much mentioned it. It's a rather low margin business on the operating side.
Has to be, because every website, like every third website that's hit the internet in like the last 10 years is helping you find hotel prices.
Exactly.
I hate to say it, right? It's not a novel idea, but it happens all the time.
Yeah. And you can also think of a broader market with the Airbnbs and whatnot. But I think one thing we do really, really well, you mentioned the 100% customer retention. If there's an area we could improve, it's probably top of funnel and getting more customers in faster and growing even faster. But we do phenomenally well once a customer comes on trial with us and gives us a chance. But the secret for how we've been succeeding, I think, is also we obsess about getting feedback from our customers constantly. So this real-time smiley feedback system that we have was not actually our initial idea. It actually came from one of our customers. So we used to have a star rating system where after you complete your Wi-Fi session, you rate, the Wi-Fi. And we found out no one ever did that, because who logs out of Wi-Fi? They just close their browser, they leave the establishment. They never actually rate their Wi-Fi. And one of our hotel owners we were serving says, Vivek, I have this thought. Why don't you move this feedback system to the beginning rather than at the end? The smiley side we kind of thought was better than the stars. And he said, just make it about the hotel in general and see how that works. And so we did that. And then he's like, this is great, but when I get this feedback, I have to keep logging in and refreshing. It'd be great if I could get this in real time. And so we said, we can set up alerts. And so it was not even us who developed this idea of intercepting the feedback before it makes its way on. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's amazing that no one today is doing it as effectively that we're aware of it. And obviously, we want to have much larger scale than we have. But it's amazing how much you can learn by just speaking with your customers to understand their problems and how you can solve them. And
they're not trying to get a cut. They're just trying to get a hotel that works.
A hotel that works, and the beauty of it's a two-way win for the hotel and the customer. Because customers, we ask them about their feedback too. And they're like, I hate surveys. I feel like it goes into a black hole. I see it redirect on my device and it looks like it's some third-party survey group.
Yeah.
But I like yours because these smileys, there's 3 of them. There's not 5. I can click it with my thumb on my mobile phone. It's a lot easier than the stars. I like it because
I'm not sitting here agonizing about what the rubric is for judging
not
it.
agonizing. It's optional and it's very seamless. It's integrated. It almost looks like the hotel is asking me for the feedback, not a third party. And those little things have helped for us to be able to get 11 times more feedback than the average third party site. And in
a useful at a useful juncture. You're not just taking 11 times as much feedback. You're actually getting it to people who can fix the problem when there is one.
Yeah.
Which, as far as if I own a hotel, I consider your TripAdvisor, your online rating system to be a necessary evil.
Right.
Because I can't do anything about it, right? It's like, okay, yeah, we screwed up and now everybody knows about it. As opposed to the light is out in room 906 and he's a little miffed. We should take him some cookies from, the restaurant and apologize for the fact that he had to report it to us. Which, what's that, $3 plus whatever it costs to do the maintenance? I mean, you're not talking real money. They'll gladly do it. And then what's the next thing they do? They tell everybody about the real-time service recovery that they experienced where, I logged in the Wi-Fi. They already asked me how things were going. And I was like, oh, yeah, light bulbs burned out. And next thing you know, some guy shows up and he had cookies.
Yeah.
I can think of much worse ways that can go.
And the best part is you actually see higher customer engagement when you have a problem and someone fixes it than when you have no problem at all. And
loyalty long-term.
Exactly. People want to see, do you react when I have something that's bothering me? If I'm giving you the feedback and you have the opportunity to correct it, do you? And if you do, it's a form of trust building in a sense. Like you're taking what I say seriously and you're going to try and correct it again if I have something wrong. And that builds customer loyalty.
Well, that's the old thing about like, I can't complain. And besides, who would listen, right? Like that's what people think is that like, I'm going to say something and then it's going to make me angrier because then they won't do anything. And it'll bother me the fact that I said something and nothing useful came of it.
And that's what hotels say when they get a bad review. They said, why didn't you just give us a chance? That's their biggest pet peeve. And the customer's like, I didn't want to waste my time doing it. Well, now every customer who's logging in is presented with the opportunity. If you don't want to give us the feedback, there's not a whole lot we can do.
Right. Where are the challenges? What are you trying to get to and what's standing in your way?
For a long time for us, it was to stay alive. We were default dead, which meant unless we were able to get revenue or financing, we were going to die.
Yeah.
Which I think nearly all startups probably are in that situation when they first get started. Unless,
unless somebody's looking out for them with a big checkbook,
exactly,
right? It does.
Exactly.
It does really tend to be the story.
And I think probably what we did well is we stayed alive. So this notion of resilience and continuing to have a belief that there's an opportunity in this space and having passion for it. We initially had a different business model in India. It was ads for access. So, just talking offline about India. When I first moved out there in early 2012, our goal was to get more people online in India for free.
So did you go to India with the purpose of working on this project.
Exactly.
But it was a different model, like you said.
Different model. Laptop and an idea and some money from the retirement account and my father also investing alongside. That was the initial investment. Nothing else.
That's a guts play.
Completely no co-founder at that point, no team, no nothing.
Did you have a safety net there? Like I don't know, a cousin, a brother, somebody who could help you like crash at a place? I mean,
did have relatives.
Thank goodness.
It was almost a little ludicrous to do. But I was naive. I mean, you have to be a little crazy to start something.
You only live once.
Only live once. Of course, we did research about the market opportunity and all of that.
We could say YOLO if you like.
But
I can't believe I just used that as a justification. Okay, so we just made a great argument against startup entrepreneurship. I'm sorry I did that to all of you. Go ahead.
No, it's good. It's good. And I mean, in a sense, it's a passion, married with factual research and this idea that you want to go execute on. And so we did that in India initially. And the problem with it was that it was like a very mild success, and it always felt like there was more success just around the corner. So we had some trickle of revenue. We did campaigns with large brand advertisers, Google, Cadbury, Snapdeal, Jabong, HDFC Bank.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so we're like, hey, we've got these great brands.
We're getting lulled into a sense of satisfaction.
Exactly. We had the typical like, oh, this is a great deck. Look at these logos, and we're at these big airports running these campaigns, but the business model just did not work there. We were sort of, imagine a bicycle between two tractor trailers. On the one side, you've got large ISPs and venues. On the other side, you have large brand advertisers. And you're trying to run these campaigns and do so in a market where there's no enforcement or very little effective enforcement of contractual law. So, you do a contract with someone and the ability to enforce it was super difficult. And so
I still take my hat off for you going and putting the work in.
The low point was not even professional. It was probably when I was in a car accident. So I was in an auto rickshaw. I was going in the opposite direction in Gurgaon, India, just outside New Delhi, and had a concussion. And at the time, no ambulance came. It was sort of chaos there. That was probably the lowest point in the company's life. We were like...
Auto versus rickshaw.
It was an actual car hitting a three-wheeler.
That's what I thought you meant.
Yes. And three-wheeler tipping over on its side. And then going to my co-founder's house, I'm like, what am I doing here? Why are we doing this? Like, what's going on? And then sort of saying, you've invested in this both his time and even a little bit financially. And, we've put so much into this. Let me go to the US for a bit, regroup, and I'll come back. And so that was probably our lowest point in the company's life. We thought, like, literally, starting a company shouldn't, be a matter of life or death for a person. It's one thing for a company. So we did that in India for about a year, and then in mid to late 2015 came to the US and started getting traction in the US. So in 2016, we finally became cash flow positive end of 2016. And it's an amazing feeling. Probably your first dollar is an amazing feeling. Probably the next one is when you become cash flow positive because you're like...
More so.
Yes. You're like, I'm finally not...
A dollar that's not already spent.
Exactly.
That's way better than the one we framed. Let me ask you a question. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they do it?
Easiest way is you can send me an email, Kumar, Kumar, at Qlicket, Qlicket.com. Our website's Qlicket.com.
This is if you want to buy Wi-Fi that gives people the chance to review your organization. It's something you're offering anyway. And also if you want to write a big check to my new friend Vivek. No, honestly, you're a very insightful and intelligent person. I wish you all the success, and I hope that you'll come back on here someday to tell us all about it.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott.
All right, that does it for this week. Thank you to Vivek Kumar. Qlicket. They're going places, and if you're smart, you'll be putting their Wi-Fi in at your joint. Normally, I don't like to come right out and give like a straight-up endorsement like that, but it's kind of hard to argue with the fact that you need to be able to do service recovery, and you need to do it like before you've lost that customer for good. This is not a hard thing when you're looking at the payback on it. Yes, you want to be able to get to that person and fix whatever they're going to complain about. And just because they didn't complain on the internet does not mean they didn't complain to 3 friends and tell them how bad their experience was. That just goes without saying. Don't forget, Pitchwerks.com is out there. All the social channels are out there. Let us know how we're doing. I would appreciate it. In the meantime, we're going to cook up another show for you. That will be back on the internet in about 7 days. I will catch you there. Take care of yourself in the meantime.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and MacTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.